Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Matty B. Going to kick off the show with some high tempo. Why don't you go ahead and get into it, Matt?
So saw Sports Illustrated had an article out, and it said LeBron James was making it clear that unless he's hurt, he's going to play the last 18 games. Why do you have to come out with that statement? Why can't you just play the last 18 games? Why is that a newsworthy story? Yeah, I feel like for someone who is by many people thought of as the GOAT of basketball, he's belly flopping right now in LA. I think someone definitely sold him a bag of goods, and he's not coming through on his side where he had all this young talent that he was supposed to mentor up, and it just looks like a terrible circus.
Well, I saw the article you were talking about, and it made me think that the basketball season ended earlier than what it did because they aren't really out of the playoff race, I don't think. I tried to do the math, and I know that they would have an uphill climb. I think they're like 6 games behind or something. And, of course, the NBA didn't really have a playoff tracker like Major League Baseball will tell you who's in the wild card spot and how many games behind they are. It kept telling me they're so many games behind the leader. But he jumped to that LA position. I think they sold him on becoming a celebrity after basketball. He's doing that TV show that I'm sure you saw. If you watched any of the AAF football, they had like a ton of ads for, I think it's called like something mile, like $1 Million Mile or something like that, produced by LeBron James. And it just seems like they're trying to get him on TV, and they sold him. Sure, his NBA contract's going to be worth so much money, but you can also pitch a guy, look at your shoe contract, look at this TV deal you can get because you're in LA now. But he's, like you said, he's flopping very similarly to what Michael Jordan did. He came out of retirement to try to lead the Wizards to the playoffs, and he failed twice before hanging it up for good. LeBron took a bunch of guys. Everyone assumed he was going to get them in the playoffs, and if they don't make it, I mean, it doesn't look good for him. And if he would have just stayed in Cleveland, he would have been fine for life. He could have got all those TV deals after basketball. You don't have to do them now because it's just a distraction. Go ahead.
I'll take you a step further. What happens if he never leaves Miami? With having Wade and Bosch there, they had a good foundation there when he won his first championship. That what happens if he just stays there and they just continue to build on what they have? They could still potentially be a dominant team with what they had.
Well, I'll be honest. I had a little bit of a soft spot for Cleveland basketball. That city suffered so much. I know it's sort of a rival in football to Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh doesn't have a basketball team. So I knew a lot of people that pulled for the Cavs growing up. And just to have him come back and win a championship there, I think that gave him a lot of redemption for your Northeast fans. And those are usually some of the harshest fans and most diehard. That's why there are a lot of sports franchises still in the Northeast. So you have him go to Miami, he wins a ring. Sure, that's going to get your casual fan, but like your diehard LeBron fan, I feel like when he went back to Cleveland, that got almost everybody back on board when he won them a championship. Doing that got the diehard basketball fan to kind of feel like they could be on his team. He did it almost by himself there. And I think if he would have just said, hey, I'm going to ride it out, or I can even take it a step further, he could have probably went back to Miami and said, hey, we're going to go back. I brought you a championship in Cleveland. I have a connection with Miami. I'm going to go back down there and retire. I don't think anyone would have knocked him for that. But to jump to the Lakers and try to do it there, if he wins there, that would be great. But it's the Lakers. They don't need him. It's like I said, Jordan went to Washington, the Wizards. So it wasn't like he was jumping to the Celtics or the Knicks or the Lakers. You don't jump to one of the biggest teams. And what seemed to me like he was trying to buy another championship by bringing free agents in. And it didn't happen. So, I don't know. It's crazy. Any other thoughts on that?
Well, and it's already being linked that uh, there's potential that LeBron's trying to push the coach Walton out and bringing over uh, Lou, Cleveland's coach, trying to bring him out west. So it just it makes no sense.
Well, I'll be honest. I thought Walton he wasn't even qualified for that job. It's worse in the NBA than it is in the NFL for like recycling coaches, and that was a clear nepotism hire. He was a young guy, so they thought he could relate to the players, and it was a young team. But like, get real. That guy, you shouldn't just get the Lakers job because your dad. I mean, that's almost what it was pointed at. So, of course, I always assumed he was going to get fired. There's no way LeBron would listen to him. That's just an honest take, so I don't know. It's crazy. Let's go ahead. I'll jump into mine. The Adidas scandal, college basketball, we talked about it early on this show. It was one of the things we were in on quick before a lot of the media picked it up because, of course, they weren't going to go after the Blue Bloods. But you have guys named like Kansas. Kansas is still playing. They're proven to be paying players. Their coach is still there. Nothing really happened. They're about to lose the Big 12, hopefully, for the first time. And I hope that the scandal rocks some of these bigger teams that were named in that. I mean, you can look at UNC. They had their scandal, and they're perfectly fine. And now you see the punishments for these agents. I think it was... Actually, I had it up so that I didn't get it wrong because I told Matt I tried to paraphrase it before the show because I didn't actually write this one down. But there are three people that they named. The first one, Kaplan, he got 9 months in federal prison. And then you have, who else? There were two other ones that I think this doesn't really say. And I'm afraid, I hate clicking on stuff on the internet during the show because so many websites have stupid videos that just pop out of nowhere. But I'm pretty sure the other two guys had 6 months in federal prison. So you're telling me that these guys took money illegally. The whole basis of this was, I believe, they weren't paying it as income taxes. The FBI was investigating this phantom money. So they got those incentives. Let's say they used that money to buy houses and things. They paid off their mortgage. And now they get to sit in jail for 6 months. And do they get to come home to that? I didn't read any financial penalties. But to me, it's almost outrageous. Like they did it all for a show. Nothing's going to change. If you were an agent, Matt, would that deter you?
I think it's one of those risk-reward things. If you stand the chance of picking up, the next Zion Williamson, and he can single-handedly make you a full career, to sacrifice that for, 9 months you said? 6 months?
9 months, I think, was the longest one. So 6 to 9.
9 months it's not like you're doing hard time. You're going to a white-collar federal prison.
Yeah, and like I said, they were getting the money too. Who said that they didn't launder some of that money somewhere? Give it to a family member, give it to a friend just to hold. He comes out and he still has the money. We don't know. So to me, it just doesn't seem like, it's almost like 9 months is almost like a semester. So these guys are basically just pretending, like even if they have families, just say, hey, I'm going away for 9 months, just pretend I'm like at college for a year. Going to get my master's and I come back, but I already have the money, like I already have the end game. Like we already own the house. So cool beans. Then I can just go get a normal job and not have to pay anything off. It's just crazy to me. But let's get into the show. Focusing in at the stop of the show with the NHL playoff race. I had some numbers here because Penguins have moved, I believe, firmly on the 8 line right now, tied with the Canadiens in a game behind the Hurricanes. Hurricanes have been playing so lights out that if they even return to the norm a little bit, I think that they're going to be locked in. They're a point ahead of Pittsburgh, and the Hurricanes are 8-2 in their last game. They've won 5 in a row. They're peaking at what you can consider the right time. Down here in Carolina, this is normally when the Hurricanes fail. They normally tease around January every year, and then they fall apart in February, sort of what the Penguins are going through this year. Now, the Penguins are there. They're being chased by the Blue Jackets still, and Blue Jackets are down 2 points. They've lost 2 games in a row. Penguins are 6-2-2 in their last 10, and all they have to do is keep playing solid hockey, and I think they are able to make it as a wild card. I think that with their top talent, if they can get in, find some rotations at work, playoffs, we all know it's a matchups game, so just make the playoffs. Unfortunately, you always hate to play the number 1 seed. They're not unbeatable. They've been beaten before across history in the NHL, so it's not like the number 1 team is going to be unbeatable in basketball per se. But right now, I think the other teams that are falling apart around them, the Flyers are making a hot run, but they were far enough back that Penguins only have 1 month. Just hang on to that spot and see if you can get it done. So, Matt, you have any thoughts on that? And basically, that's for the Eastern side.
I was just trying to get an update here because looks like in the third, Pittsburgh and Florida are tied right now.
Yeah, it's 2-2 last I saw.
Yeah, it's into the third. Malkin just picked up a penalty, so I just want to see him just play some consistent defense and stop trying to find. I feel like when the Penguins start to slip, they get into a habit of trying to get the perfect shot instead of just getting shots on goal because they have so many goal scorers. They need to just get pucks on net, and then that's going to be the thing that's going to help them down the stretch.
And just looking at the whole league as itself, the Eastern Conference is so much better and deeper than the Western Conference. If the Penguins were in the West right now, they would firmly be in the playoffs at about a 6 seed, I think, and be up 5 or 6 points. So they would almost be guaranteed a spot if they won a couple more games. Now you're in the East. You have to battle to get in. Most likely right now, and you could flip with the Hurricanes, I'm not sure, but you have to play the Lightning, a team that already has 104 points, 50 wins and only 12 losses. And in hockey, that's sort of outrageous. I don't know, I have to go back through the years, but for a team to be that heavy at the top doesn't look well for the matchup in that first round. I know I normally say you get in, anything can happen, but it doesn't look like this is one of those years where you want to be sitting at the 8 line. So do anything you can. Try to jump some of these other teams. Maybe they can get ahead. Like I said, they're tied right now with the Canadiens, so got to definitely pass them, possibly get at the Hurricanes to get a better seed. Just play consistent. So need goaltender help, and unfortunately you're not really going to get it. We need Murray to return to his form. I'm just afraid that those concussions, it's almost like a wide receiver. You see him start to get a couple concussions, and then he's not so sure-handed anymore. And goalie, you really can't have that at all. So it's something the Penguins are going to have to address in the offseason, definitely sooner rather than later. Anything else you have on the NHL?
Nope.
Let's go ahead and jump into the NFL Combine. One of our favorite things here because it's all hype. It's almost like a meat market. You have the guys, they run out there, they see how fast they run and how high they jump and things like that. The NHL or the NFL actually put out a list of like their medals, and I want to say Penn State won this last year. I can't remember if we talked about it or not, but they give it to position groups, which players get like first, second, and third. I think it's like per position group there's like 21 medals or something. I don't know how they all give it out, but Iowa surprisingly led with 11 guys placing in the top 3 in position groups. And I think they basically came from 4 guys, 2 on offense and 2 on defense. So that's a crazy stat. And I have the list. I think their NFL Combine or NFL Network put it out on Twitter. But the other teams, Notre Dame had 10, Michigan had 9, Those are your top three. And then you had Washington at 4 with 7. And then you had a couple teams tied for 5th. Kansas State, Ole Miss, Penn State, Ohio State, and USC. And the one thing I mentioned, Matt, before the show, for all the hype the SEC has about getting all these great players, they don't have teams in the top, 9 with the tiebreakers? Top 9 teams, they only have Ole Miss. So you're telling me that Alabama gets the number 1 recruiting class for like a decade straight, and they can't have a couple guys in the top 3 of their positions? And don't tell me they're not sending guys to the NFL every year, because they are. So it's crazy that you have all these athletes in the slow Big Ten, because a lot of those teams, Penn State, Iowa, Michigan, Ohio State, those are Big Ten teams. Then you had Kansas State, which is a sneaky good team with Bill Snyder whenever he was there. I think he's retired now. So we'll see if there's a drop-off there. But definitely a way to look at the athletes and hear about the SEC speed. You would think that they would be higher up. And I have one other thing, just crazy. Ohio State had 3 of course my phone's being weird, 3 of the top 8 fastest receivers in the combine. 3 of the top 8. That's outrageous. I'm trying to look at it. They had Johnny Dixon, who ran a 4.41, Terry McLaurin, a 4.35, and then Paris Campbell, who tied for the fastest with a 4.31. They had 3 skill guys under Urban Meyer that were in the top 8 in the NFL Combine. That's crazy to me that they couldn't. I know they scored a lot of points this year, but you can't have guys that get open like that. That's like an NFL type, and I know it's only speed, but playmakers out there. What are your thoughts on the NFL Combine? Did anything stand out to you?
I tell you what, in years past, I'd watched almost the entire Combine. I think I may have watched a couple plays, just for the simple fact that I see more and more now that you have guys like the Metcalf kid from Ole Miss that tests out of the park. But one of the big questions when you look at someone like him, he was 6'2", 6'3", 230 pounds. Ran well. Had like 1.6% body fat or something insane. Like they showed the pictures of him, and it was like you could just see every like muscle fiber, not just every muscle, but every muscle fiber on him. And it's like, why wasn't? I thought back to our boy Mike Leach, and one of the things that he talked about with his offense was he never said, "I have to try to get the ball to this particular person." The ball finds the athletes. Well, if he was such a great athlete at Ole Miss, why didn't the ball find him more? Why wasn't he targeted more? I don't watch Ole Miss football, so I couldn't answer that question honestly. But I think like he's such a freak that it may have resurrected Al Davis, because the Raiders might jump up and take him.
Well, I'll say I think with Ole Miss they hired Joe Moorhead, who I was a fan of when he was at Penn State, and I think that the dynamic quarterback that they had that would have fit perfectly in his system, Shea Patterson, transferred to Michigan. So then you're implementing a run-first scheme. Basically, that's what he had at Penn State. And you don't have the quarterback that can make those plays, and you almost need – well, you have a guy that's athletic enough to make plays at receiver, but you almost need a quarterback that can help get them into space, like he was able to do with Trace McSorley. So, I mean, you're an athlete. You signed into Ole Miss. My question is, why didn't he try to transfer out? If he thought he was going to be underutilized or whatever, and maybe he did, maybe he was happy there. But there were a bunch of guys. I think Van Jefferson was one of them, transferred to Florida, other than Shea, who we mentioned, and I think there was an lineman. There was a bunch of people that actually transferred out, and I think he would have fit perfect in a system like you mentioned, Mike Leach's system, or somewhere else, and he would have had a much better year. Now he's relying on the combine and hopefully his tape to jump him up in the draft for a desperate team. But, I mean, what about a guy like Joey Bosa, Matt? He sat out the rest of Ohio State's, and to me, he didn't impress at all. His stats actually hurt, I believe, based on his performance. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, but see, here you go. He's going to end up being one of the top picks because of the name, because of the limited production that you were able to see on the film. You know, I almost look at, is he going to be a liability? You know, let's just say in a fantasy situation, he just completely bottoms out and like falls all the way to Pittsburgh. Does Pittsburgh pass on him? No.
Well, it's almost like a catch-22 for him. He could have not gone to the combine, said he was still rehabbing or whatever, and went to Ohio State's pro day. And I'm sure Urban Meyer, well, I know he's not there anymore. I'm sure he would have did the workout for him. But I'm sure he could have scripted something to show off his best attributes. And everyone was talking about him being a sure number one. But you have a guy like that gets hurt, sits out. I brought in his stats in October. I think it was around the Penn State game, where I said for all the hype he was getting, he didn't have the stats to back it up. Very similar to Rashawn Gary from Michigan, who tested better, more athletic, but in his career didn't have the numbers. Bosa had the same thing. You would think that by sitting out, he would have a good combine. Like another example would from Michigan is Karan Higdon, running back. He sat out the bowl game, actually ran a 4.49 40, which I didn't expect from watching him in the games. To me, that's taking advantage. If you're going to sit out the bowl game, you better come to the combine in shape. Like I wish the guy all the best, a Michigan man through and through. Who cares if he sat out the bowl game? But if he would have sat out the bowl game, came to the combine out of shape and ran a 4.9, yeah, I would have been a little disappointed in his decision. Now he's played himself up where a lot of people were questioning if he had breakaway speed at the running back position. He came in and killed it. Like Joey Bosa, he came in and almost hurt his stock. I don't think, Matt, just because of the name and some of his measurables, that he would fall all the way to Pittsburgh. I don't know what we're drafting at. It's around like the midpoint, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But
no, I was only using that as like a total hypothetical. But I think like when you look, I don't does it look bad that he kind of just gave up in the middle of the year? Yeah. But I'm sure any of the issues that a team might have that's in the top 5 or top 10 when they interviewed him, I'm sure he had to answer for why did you just give up, you know, in the middle of the year? Because the potential red flag could be sign that rookie contract and get, you know, the X amount of guaranteed money and say, what's to stop you from just saying, well, I'm just going to, you know, play a year or two and then I'll be done and just quit because you quit in college.
I don't even know if they would try to pin it that way, but if I'm a team going overall number one like they had slated him to be the number one pick, I don't see how you can look at all this and say, for surefire, the NFL is going to make me pay a number one pick price for this guy, that all the things you just mentioned, they have to almost pass on him now. Because how many defensive linemen have we seen drafted that don't really pan out right away? You can look at Clowney. They just gave him the franchise tag. Something very similar. Gave up on his team was the theme around him, and now he's in the NFL, and he hasn't lived up to his potential, especially against opposite of J.J. Watt. You would think that he would have been able to make his own plays. And I could even put Bosa up against T.J. Watt, which I think is very similar. Lesser production than his brother, coming up, using the name, and he fell all the way to the end. Wouldn't Steelers get him end of the first round?
Yep.
And Bosa had more preseason hype because he played for a bigger team. He played for Ohio State compared to Wisconsin. And is that really all it's coming down to? I mean, we had a comment come into us. It was about how do you feel about Bosa repping all the Ohio State gear? And I responded, Ohio State has to love it because it's almost like free advertising for them as they discuss this guy being a potential number 1 pick. I'm sure they don't care that he skipped out on half the season for that free promotion. You can't almost pass that up. So,
well, and let's be honest, he was there. He was a student at the university, so
yeah, he played
stuff.
Yeah, he played in for how many years? I mean, you can't. It's not like you can go one and done. Where, like, let's say you brought up Zion earlier for Duke. He got hurt in the UNC game. What if he would have hung it up there? Then he wears a bunch of Duke stuff to the NBA draft. I think that would rub people the wrong way, considering he was only there for a few months and then quit on the team. But Bosa played for a couple of years, so you got to cut him some slack there. I mean, like, I don't know if I had anything else that really stood out to me.
What are your thoughts on Kyler Murray?
Too short. I'm pretty sure we talked about this on the show. I said he's going to come in at 5'10", and maybe this was off the air. I can't remember, but I said those exact words. He's going to come in at 5'10", and only a crazy man would draft him in the upper half of the first round or the first round at all. Because Drew Brees is 6 foot something. He's at least 6 foot. I think Flutie is even there. And even if not, Flutie played a couple decades ago when people were a lot shorter. So now you have like 6'7" linemen. Like, did you see some of the guys that are measuring up? It's outrageous. So you're going to get a guy that's 5'10". How many small quarterbacks have ever worked out in the NFL? I mean, is it really just Flutie? And you could throw Brees in there, but Brees isn't really a tiny running quarterback. How many running Heisman quarterbacks do we have to see get hurt? I mean, everyone keeps talking about Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson has 6 inches on that guy. And 30 pounds? I don't know what he weighed in at. And everyone keeps talking about how he's going to get hurt. How is he going to get hurt and Kyler Murray is not going to get hurt? Kyler Murray's like a little man out there. So what are your thoughts on him?
My thoughts initially mirrored yours. But then there was one factor that I think is really underplayed. And it's the fact that he does have the dual sport. So when you're looking at athletes, and we've kind of talked about this before, like on a much lower level, but like at the high school level, an athlete is an athlete. You take that athlete that is a good baseball player. Typically, you can put them on the basketball court and they can be an athlete. Put them on a football field, they're an athlete. To me, I think with Kyler Murray, he makes sense going number 1 overall to Arizona. Absolutely, hear me out, because they got Cliff Kingsbury as the head coach. You know he's not going to go in. Cliff's not going to run the same old recycled NFL playbook. He's going to try to intertwine some of that air raid that he is familiar with, that he's comfortable with. He's going to try to infuse that into the NFL. That is a move that makes sense because Murray already ran the familiar system at Oklahoma. He's comfortable with that they could take those concepts, tie it in, and he could be he could be in good shape handling an offense at that level. If they try to pigeonhole him into a true Gruden West Coast, purist system, he's gonna struggle, I think, because of his height.
I'll say this: you might have the only point where I could see him having a chance, but I don't think he's going to be durable enough to make an impact. And if Arizona goes that route, they need to get RG3 and a couple of these other dynamic spread quarterbacks on the phone and say, hey, we need a backup quarterback that's ready to play today, because you never know. I have a feeling that, and this is going to be a throwback, he reminds me very similar of a profile to former Iowa quarterback back all the way in 2002, Brad Banks. Now, Brad Banks was the same type of quarterback before his time at Iowa. And the knock on him was that he was too short and he struggled with the NFL ball. I think he ended up second in the Heisman to who was the quarterback at USC? Carson Palmer, yeah. So second in the Heisman, everyone's pumped up. He's going to have this thing. The knock on him, he's too small, he'll never make it. I don't even know if he had a fair shot. But I always wondered what it would be in the NFL. And I looked it up before the show, and I didn't see anything conclusive. But originally, Kyler Murray did not throw. And to me, that was the biggest red flag of all. Because in college, to my knowledge, you still have control over the size of the football. In the NFL, I don't think you do. Like, you play with the NFL ball. And I think when you're 5'10", you're going to have a tough time gripping that bigger football. And I want to see him throw it. Everyone says he has a great arm. But you're going to come into the same issue that is really going to exaggerate. If it's a heavier ball, it's going to mess up his throwing mechanics. If it brings his arm level down any, then you're even at a greater chance of tip balls. I think it's very telling that he didn't throw yet. I mean, he might throw at pro day, but again, what's going to be the control on that? Because I'm sure Oklahoma's going to take precautions to shield him. I hope I'm wrong on the guy, but I could see very similar to what Eric Crouch. Did he get actually drafted from Nebraska?
Yes, he did.
So he gets drafted.
He got drafted, but they moved him to wide receiver right away.
Yeah, they moved him to wide receiver, and I think he tried to play quarterback, and they said this isn't happening. I could see the same thing happening with Kyler Murray. He gets there, has trouble holding on the ball, can't throw it, something similar. They say, hey, we're going to move you to this position, and he walks away to play baseball. I mean, what would be the harm in that? But are you willing to risk that for a first-round pick? Like, if Pittsburgh ended up picking him, it would be so out of left field. And, I mean, Roethlisberger was picked in a similar position. It was around the middle of the first round. I don't know what the Steelers' draft pick is exactly. It could be higher than that. I think he was, 13th? So you have a quarterback. If he goes around that slot, take a flyer on him for a team that needs a quarterback. What about, a team that needs some dynamic style like Minnesota? I don't know what Minnesota's picking, but if you're able to get him later in the first round, why not try to infuse your offense a little bit? It seems to have worked for Baltimore, going from that style to Lamar Jackson, so much so that they got rid of Joe Flacco. But I just think it's way too risky. And, I mean, I'm going to have to go with your opinion, Matt. You're going to have to put him at a place like Arizona with a college-style coach that's going to put him in that system and back him up with other quarterbacks that are similar. I mean, the best scenario, I think, for him would be possibly backing up Cam Newton or someone. I know Cam's a lot more physical, but he could learn a lot about staying healthy. I know Cam's had his shots where he's gone down, played dinged up, had some issues. Like, why not put him in to spur Cam Newton and see what happens? But I don't know. Anything else on that?
I did. Now I'm losing my train of thought here. I don't know. We'll just move on.
Yeah, I don't have anything else on the combine. I did want to give out a shout out to Chase Winovich, who was crushing it, and that's one guy that I am dreading the fact that there's a good chance he ends up in New England. Because as a Steeler fan, you don't want a guy like that that's going to be a hard worker with a high motor ending up on the Patriots. That's exactly the guy they grab late in the second or third round. Hopefully a combine got him a higher pick, but I hope he's successful. And I just want the Steelers to go out and get players like that, or get players with speed. They need guys with speed on defense, and I would really like it at the linebacker position. I know Devin Bush was fast, and the guy from LSU, of course I'm forgetting his name. Was it Ross?
Yeah.
So get one of those guys. That's what I hope the Steelers go out and get. And I know it's still early. We'll talk on our NFL draft stuff, but you need a fast linebacker to replace Shazier. And those were the two fastest guys I saw this year play. And the combine seemed to have backed it up with fast 40 times. I mean, they both have high football IQ. Get someone dynamic like that to replace Shazier. That's my final thoughts on the draft.
It's a deep draft this year for defensive players. I'd like to see Devin Bush go to Pittsburgh.
I've seen some people had him as high as 7 or 8 based on how he played. I know he had the hip injury, but based on the combine, I don't think that was a real issue moving forward. But I'd be fine with either guy, especially if you can get him late in the first round and then fill it up with another guy that's going to be almost like a TJ Watt. I feel like that's what Chase Winovich is playing himself into. A high-end guy that is going to work hard. Obviously, he got really good results at the combine. Get another guy like that. I know Steelers aren't in the position to really get another defensive end, but find some other guys. Last year, I was disappointed that they went high with a safety that didn't have the top-end speed, almost like a hybrid strong safety. Get some guys that are fast. That's where we're lacking.
Well, I want to see what Pittsburgh ends up doing. I know we're jumping the gun here, but I want to see what they do with moving Antonio Brown, because if they can get his salary moved, there's a lot of free agent safeties right now that would really look good in black and gold right now.
Well, we had all the Pitt homers come out, and after Larry Fitzgerald said some talk about Antonio Brown, they were already throwing out the rumors that maybe they can trade Antonio Brown for Larry Fitzgerald.
And Arizona already came out and said, nah, we want no part of that.
It's crazy how many people would just feel like that would be a good move. Like, no, the Steelers do not need help with an aging wide receiver. I know Larry Fitzgerald's great. Maybe on a free agent contract, you could pick someone up like that. But guys, we need defensive speed. What are you talking about?
Dollar for dollar, though, I would take that trade for a positive body in the locker room. They need to flip the culture in the locker room and to get rid of a cancer that Antonio Brown's now like selling personalized videos for $500. That, like, you don't need that.
Hey, I just like that Larry Fitzgerald called him Mr. Big Chest in like the message to him. He said I'm friends with Mr. Big Chest or whatever, which was outrageous. I didn't even hear that until you told me about it on the show. So, well, how would anyone want to do that? But let's go on. Let's get into some real football. The AAF, my man Steve Spurrier, Matt, has Orlando as the last undefeated team. And after Birmingham's weird showing, I have to believe, and Vegas odds back me up on this, that he has a great chance at winning a championship. It's all about coaching. Who would have thought? Also, remember how you brought up Aaron Murray? Guess what? He came into the game and got a win. Who would have thought that Matt Sims was a bad quarterback? We talked about it all last week. Oh my gosh. Aaron Murray can just get wins. And I feel bad I called out Denard Robinson. I didn't think he was playing. Guess what? He actually got to play at running back last week. He scored a touchdown. So who would have guessed that you start to play your better players instead of playing who knows why you put those other players in and you start to get some wins. That's why I'm questioning like what the AAF was doing with their coaching hires. Because obviously Bob Stoops was available. You already got Steve Spurrier. Why not get Bob Stoops, pay him more than what the XFL is going to pay him, and go ahead and get some other big-name college coaches? You can't tell me that Les Miles would rather be at Kansas than coaching in this league. I mean, he was looking for a head coaching job for a while. He landed in Kansas. Like, get him. Could you imagine if the league, there's only like, 8 teams, if half the league was like national championship winning college coaches? What's Gene Chizik up to? Did Mac Brown hire him at UNC? I think he was let go. Like, they could honestly had at least half the league with college championship winning coaches. Like, that's crazy that no one sat down and thought, like, why don't we call these guys up? So I think it's all about coaching. But that's anything else you got, or what were your thoughts on the AAF?
You pretty much nailed it. I still feel like there's like a major discrepancy between Orlando and San Antonio, and I'm even going to throw Arizona in there too. That like they kind of have like a functioning offense compared to the rest of the league that's just kind of limping along with like we're going to play good defense and field goal teams to death.
Well, I think honestly, the college area thing was a great idea, except for the fact that they only have one team in Florida. And you put all of the Florida guys on one team. Like, that is an extremely loaded team because a lot of the guys that have fallen through the cracks, like you're putting UCF guys with Florida State guys, with Miami, with Florida. Like, that's four decently large schools, and I'm phrasing it that way because of UCF. You could say like three high programs. The amount of players from like Alabama and Auburn on Birmingham, that's not going to be able to go against what Florida's throwing together. And I think that they really hurt by not putting any teams in the North to try to counteract it. Because you could have really put one in between like Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, and tried to pull all of those players into one area. All the Florida kids did the Georgia team and tried to like pull in Tennessee and the North Carolina schools and tried to, because everyone knows Florida, the state of Florida has the richest football recruiting ground. So, or if not one of them, it's definitely in the top. So you have that recruiting ground right there that's being eaten up by one team. I'm a little disappointed that the Texas teams, like San Antonio, they should have been better. And maybe it's because of, I don't know how they split up the lines, but like the Arizona team's eating into it. But the West Coast definitely are looking like they are well behind the Eastern teams in terms of talent, and it comes down to coaching. So I think they could have thought that through better and tried to split up some type of, okay, where are the blue blood football teams? Let's try to put however many people on each team and not try to do a full Southern League. And I understand they did that because of the timing of the season, but that Salt Lake City game, did you see that? It was complete snow. There was almost no one in the stadium. I thought I was watching the Tar Heels play. Like, all I saw was white bleachers. Like, you know how UNC has those shiny bleachers? That's what it looked like to me. And I thought, where is everybody? Oh, wait, it's probably negative 20 degrees out there. So you
watch Miami play.
Yeah, you can't tell me that they couldn't have put a team in a dome in the North. Like, Detroit has a dome. Put the team there and have them pick players, like I said, from the major Big Ten schools. And if you needed to balance it out, put Notre Dame in there too. Like, I don't know. I feel like they could have just had a map, found out northern cities that had domes, contacted them, and tried to do more of a regional college thing, because I really think they had an opportunity with that, and I think that's where they really missed the boat. And I think Florida, that Orlando team, is really solid because of that. Plus, they went out and got the best coach. I think it's easy to say Spurrier's the best coach in that league. So, I don't know. We'll see. Because there's a lot of rumors that the XFL and the AAF are going to merge sometime. And which is outrageous because the XFL hasn't even started yet. But the XFL has teams in the bigger cities. So it makes sense that it would merge almost like Major League Baseball and NFL and like the ABA did with basketball back in the day. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think TNT is picking up 2 more games, which is a huge deal because I think they're picking them up to lead into college basketball tournament. So I think it's like March 23rd or the March 30th. It's like the second or third week of the basketball tournament where there's only a handful of games, and they're going to go ahead and lead into the basketball tournament with AAF football. I think I saw that they had over 1 million viewers. One of the matchups beat head-to-head an NBA game on ABC, which is crazy because this is college football, or this is like not even college football. It's minor league football on a cable network. ABC is on over-the-air television, which almost always has better numbers. So for it to beat an NBA game on a regular channel, to me, is just crazy and shows the potential of a spring football league. But I would like them to expand that college reach thing. Because what better way to get hated rivals to cheer for the same team than putting their players together on one team? Because, like, could you imagine if McSorley, because I feel like he's going to get he's not going to get a real shot in the NFL. But what happens if you stick McSorley with like Denard Robinson at running back, and I'm sure some of those Ohio State super fast receivers aren't going to stick. You throw them on an offense, like what does that team look like? I think I would watch that. So I think that's what you're seeing right now with the Orlando team. All these Florida guys together on one team, and they could really take it to the next level by signing Tim Tebow. I know he's in baseball, but I would love to see that come back. What was that head nod for?
No.
Why not?
Just let him be married, let him play baseball, and let him just be away.
Is he married? I missed that.
He's going to be.
Oh, I'm not surprised you know that. As a diehard Florida Gator apologist.
Blow me.
Always knowing what's going on in the swamp. George Sanal.
Know that? Sun Tzu.
All right, let's go ahead and get into wrap it up with some college stuff. I just have a couple quick topics. College hoops. I don't know if I complained about this last week, but as expansion happens, they have to do something with like the regular season title. Because you have these unbalanced schedules, and I think I did complain about it, where Purdue has like the easiest basketball schedule. They played Michigan once, and I think they like missed something with some of the other teams in the top half of the Big Ten. But against Michigan and Michigan State, they went 1-2, and if they win tonight, which I think the game's going on right now, unless it was at 7, they pretty much have a clear shot to lock up a tie for the Big Ten championship. And I know it's just a meaningless banner. Everyone says, like, you always get the argument, is the regular season better in college basketball, or should it be the conference tournament title? Because then every team gets a chance, but you could have one off night. So I don't know. It used to be when everyone played an even schedule, the conference championship banner meant something. But like, look at the Big 12. Kansas has won it so many years in a row, and now they're on the brink of losing it to either Kansas State, which has to hurt, or Texas Tech, which is a clear football school. So, I mean, you're going out there and you're putting it together. Look at the point I'm trying to make here, Matt, is I really have been drawing conclusions here, and I think Virginia and Purdue are almost the same team. For whatever reason, they luck out with the easier conference schedule than the Blue Bloods. They'll win the ACC, and then guess what? Tournament time comes, they lose to a 16 seed because that's Virginia things to do. And then Purdue, they come in, win the Big Ten. Everyone's like, "Oh, Purdue, they're gonna win. They have all these 7-footers on their team." Sweet 16 loss, or even worse than that, like round of 32, they'll be bounced out. And brackets will be busted. And I think I looked it up, and I don't think either of those teams has ever won a national championship. So that's the point I'm trying to make here is I think Purdue and Virginia are doppelgangers in the opposite conferences. So just because they're going to win the league, Virginia's looking like they're going to wrap it up too. They're going to have an early exit. So put your money on that.
But the Noles did win tonight, so they earned that number 4 spot, get the double bye for the ACC tournament. So that's good things for the Noles.
I know they need to mix it up because just imagine if Florida State was in that I forget what other they could have been in the Final Four against Michigan instead of Loyola Chicago if they were in the bracket that they were in, Virginia's bracket last year. So keep an eye out, because our teams had to play in, the Elite Eight, and then we had to play Loyola Chicago, which Sister Jean's already talking trash, saying that if her team gets in, that they're going to win. I think that they actually had us matched up in the Michigan side, playing as like a, what would it be, a 3-14 maybe? Is that the matchup? And she already said that they're coming to get revenge this year. So mark that down as a W. So we will see. But if Michigan keeps winning, who knows? Maybe they beat Michigan State and then Purdue will drop one. And then we can have like an actual championship game going off on Sunday. Michigan versus Michigan State. I think the game's on Sunday. That should be the championship game. But, of course, Purdue's sitting there playing who they got left. Northwestern or someone else on like the championship week. Like what a great matchup, guys. I'm sure I'm riveted. But if Indiana was any better, it would make it better. But Indiana is such a dumpster fire that it doesn't matter who they hire at coach. They had Tom Crean. Matt, they had Tom Crean. They would win the conference, and they weren't happy with that. And now look where they are. In a scandal, doing all kind of other weird stuff. But
well, they went to a place where just regular season wins is kind of the typical. Goes to Georgia.
Well, I'll tell you that I saw some sad news that I wasn't aware of. I know we made fun of like Pitt's basketball investment failure when they tried to like invest in basketball in the early 2000s. I was coming through some research notes, and I noticed that Penn State has been to a Final Four more recently than Pitt. And I almost threw up in my mouth a little bit because Penn State is so bad at basketball. And Pitt has been, they were masquerading as a great team under Jamie Dixon. Like, didn't they have a number 1 seed? Like, come on, bro. You can make one Final Four. So, Pitt fans, I feel bad for you. I saw an article that they're going to go back to the retro jerseys.
The ones that they should have had from the get-go.
Yes, the only shirts I buy. Like, if I've been to Pitt games, everyone knows Jeff played at Pitt. So I've been to games with him, and I put on the retro colors because that's the only ones that I thought looked good. The old Dan Marinos with the script Pitt. And guess what they went to? Those weird block. I feel bad for Larry Fitzgerald because he had to play in his time there. So every photo is going to be him with the Rod Rutherford Panther logo. Like, go back to the script Pitt and how sexy that jersey would have looked on Larry Fitzgerald.
Yep.
It would have been great. And they blew it because they had to go for what? Like, were they trying to be like a Notre Dame Gold? Not worth it. So hopefully that's on the docket and they're able to switch back. Going with other administrative things, Jim Delaney, Big Ten commissioner, has announced that he's stepping down in 2020, I believe. And I couldn't be happier. And I'm sure that other Penn State fans are just as happy because I think Delaney has screwed Michigan and Penn State the most out of any teams in the conference. If you go all the way back to, was it like 1990 or so, 1991, when Delaney had first started in the conference, he actually called the head of the officials before a Michigan-Illinois game and told them to watch out and call some penalties on a couple of Michigan's players because he didn't like the way they were conducting themselves on the sideline. So much so that the Chicago Tribune, I think that was the newspaper, picked it up with some quotes from Bo Schembechler, which I believe was I think he was athletic director at that time. Because I think he was athletic director in 1989 when they won the national championship in basketball. So he was like, why is he coming after me? He might have still been coaching head football, but I don't know. But Delaney has always been meddling ever since. I'm sure Penn State in 1994 when they didn't get the votes from the AP, how come Jim Delaney didn't step up and have the Big Ten team support Penn State's bid for a national championship? Instead, we let Nebraska get it, and then that set up the weird half vote in 1997. Like, he really screwed both of us. So I hate that guy. He added Rutgers to the league, so you can't tell me that he did all great things. And I'm glad he's stepping down. maybe now we won't have to play. Michigan won't have to play Michigan State, Penn State, Michigan State, Ohio State, and Notre Dame all on the road every year, because he messed up the whole schedule, and he messed up the schedule with Penn State and Ohio State. Next year, I believe, at the end of the year, Ohio State has to play Penn State. It might not be next year, it might be the year after, but they set up the schedule so that Ohio State plays Penn State like the week in November before Thanksgiving, and then Thanksgiving weekend he plays Michigan. And then if they would win those two, they would have to play in the Big Ten championship game again. Why would you backload your best team for almost a decade now with that awful schedule? Meanwhile, Alabama's playing Chattanooga State, and you're playing Penn State. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. When I saw the schedule, I thought, why? I don't think Gene Smith, the athletic director for Ohio State, would agree to that. And I know Urban Meyer would never have agreed to that to begin with. You had a great thing, that Ohio State-Penn State game in October and the Michigan-Penn State game in October or September have been great marketing opportunities for the Big Ten, and you're throwing one of those away? Why? It just doesn't make any sense. So that's my end rant on him. Matt, you have any thoughts on Jim Delaney?
Sounds like you don't like him very much.
Well, he started the Big Ten Network, and he didn't include streaming. So now, unless you pay for cable, you really can't watch it. And for the longest time,
get yourself some cable. You can get access to the network.
Well, for the longest time, if you're not in a state that has a team, you can't get in anyway. So I'm in North Carolina, and I don't know. It used to be the case where if you had cable, you still didn't get the Big Ten Network, and you really couldn't buy it either. You had to be in one of the Big Ten footprint states, or like it was like Texas, California, or Florida. Like they picked like the most random states to carry it in. I think New York was one of them too, probably because of its proximity to Rutgers, that big school. But I don't know. I look at the ACC and what they're doing, and I'm not high on their commissioner either, Swafford. He signed that awful deal with Raycom so that most of their big games aren't on like ESPN. They stick them on Raycom, and you have to watch it on like the weird. It's almost like a local channel. Like, it's just a weird stream. Like, why would he do that and then not create an ACC network with the rest of the conferences? He's creating it now, like a decade later. Strange. But at least Delaney's stepping down. Who knows what the ACC's doing? We'll see, because their network's coming up. So that'll be interesting to see if I like it better. I just want to be able to watch whatever games I want to watch when I want to watch them. It's not that hard. I mean, you already have the network set up. Just put them on the app and let me stream whatever games. If I want to watch Michigan's hockey team, I should be able to do it. We talked about it. One week I wanted to watch Penn State, Michigan hockey, and what did I get to watch? Campus Eats, Illinois, or something like that. So, like, why would you waste all that money building the conference network, Delaney? If ACC has an on-demand ESPN Plus deal where I could have watched that game, or like, let's say it's a random softball game or something, then I'll be jealous, but we'll see. Last thing I have for the Big Ten, this will wrap it up before we get into our final bell. Illinois, for some reason, they've been without a mascot since they got rid of their Indian, the Illini, whatever that they had, like I forget what the name of that tribe was, but they had an Indian. They've slowly been phasing him out, so much that I was talking to someone, and they were like, "Hey, what's Illinois' mascot?" And then I froze because I couldn't remember, and I said, "I think it was an Indian," and it was as recently as 2007. But they put up a vote, and it's going through the rounds now, that they're going to become, excuse me, their name is going to be Alma Otters, or at least that's not going to be the name of the team, but that's going to be their mascot now. So like it's
like the land shark.
To be honest, you're probably right, and I don't know why. It's almost like Iowa Hawkeyes. They have like the hawk, or the Cyclones, Iowa State Cyclones. They have they also have a bird for some reason. Like, why? Why have an otter? What does that do? Like, were they feeling like they were left out because a lot of other teams have like weasel type mascots in the Big Ten? It'd almost be like if the SEC teams all decided to call their teams the Tigers, because they're like, all right, we already have enough Tigers. We need everyone to be the Tigers, but just like Auburn, you can then have your own War Eagle mascot if you want on the side, but you officially have to change your name to Tigers. So the Florida Tigers, and then they have a Swamp Gator that they sometimes show. Like, why not? Because
they should do it for the whole conference. Just have them all just be the Tide. Since they're all just riding Alabama's coattails anyhow.
It just doesn't make any sense. Why would you just randomly make up a mascot? But hey, if that's what the kids want, I think the picture was making rounds. I don't know. I'll put it out. I'll find it on Twitter and I'll send it out. But that's the last thing I had. We'll see. See if that's going to be a real thing or not. Because I would love to see it. I remember when a lot of people think Michigan has a mascot, but we never did. But Michigan State tried to make a mascot for Michigan once. I think it was around, was it the 70s or the 80s? If you look it up and you type in like Michigan Wolverines mascot, Michigan State made up a fake mascot costume for the Wolverines so that they could like, I don't know if they were beating it up, have the Spartan beating it up or what they were doing. But that's the closest Michigan's come to have a mascot. And I really don't think when I go to a game like, I wonder where the mascot is, or why don't we have a mascot? That's never crossed my mind. But for some reason, a bunch of students at Illinois thought, we need to have an otter out there for the students, because I think it started with the students. They thought, you know what's missing, Matt? An otter. It would be like if Florida State, if they were like, hey, the Seminole tribe's like, we don't want you guys to use the Seminole anymore. And all the students were like, well who's going to come out and ride the horse? Like, we have to have something come out. And then you just transitioned to like what's a bird down there? Like a heron? Is that a thing? Like they just transitioned to some Florida animal.
Well, no. We'll just say, no. We'll koala bear now.
Yeah.
What the hell's an otter doing in Chicago?
Is that a thing, though? I feel like they might live there.
I don't think there's otters in that area.
Well, it's almost like that. If you had a koala bear run out into the... Where's he throw the spear? Is it in the end zone or is it in the middle of the field?
We'll say they're pandas now. There's pandas in Tallahassee. Throw a spear and he just eats it like it's bamboo.
That's what I was going to say. Someone throws down some bamboo and the panda runs out and then just chomps on it. Like, that could be the opening.
Just this big fat panda just slowly just chewing on bamboo. That really gets me hyped for a football game.
But you still call your team the Seminoles anyway. Because that's what they're going to do. They're still going to be the Illini or whatever they're called. It's like, I'm baffled. But whatever. Whatever they need to do to help their team.
They're just trying to be like the SEC.
Do you have anything for the final bell?
Yeah, I want to send some love to my Bulldogs this week. We entered a weightlifting competition up at Portage and was proud that in the past we've only had one lifter. This year we had 6 kids participate, so little by little we're building our off-season program and proud that we're getting off to a good start here this off-season. Very
cool. I'm glad to hear that, and hopefully you can continue your success into next season. Everyone knows doing team workouts and stuff is a number one important factor in getting team unity going. It's just the off-season stuff and having the guys hang out together and building that camaraderie, and I guess trust is the biggest thing. But you got anything else for us?
Absolutely. Go to our store. Check it out. Find yourself some nice gear, and keep yourself warm. Keep yourself healthy. As you can hear throughout the show, I'm dying of cough and cold.
Yeah, I was in the same boat there a couple minutes ago. But, we're getting that stuff up. I know it's like a crazy show because it's the football off-season. So we'll be hitting up some strange topics as we get ready for the NBA and NHL playoff season. Actually, before that would be March Madness. And then we have the NFL draft. And we also have the AAF championships this year. So that'll be a cool little playoff tidbit. But Still working on getting more stuff up on the store. It's if you go to southboundsports.com, you can check all that out. And we're getting all our content in one place, so you'll be able to follow us there, get the latest show notes, and some of the other research stuff we talk about on the show. Like last week, I talked about getting something together for comparing punt returns and kickoff returns. It's all going to be available on southboundsports.com. So make sure to bookmark that and subscribe to the show on iTunes or your favorite podcast host. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.